Okay, so we've got the floor plate set up there, which will give us enough to do a basic setup with the walls. But then before we go too far with the remaining elements, we're going to have to do a little bit more work on the levels. And so, firstly, I might also put in some grids when we go to work out the rest of the structure. But for now, I'll just put walls in right along the planes that we've set up. And so notice we've got the sandstone walls. Well, there's one here. I'm not sure what the other one is actually. It might not be. You can't. Yeah, no, I've been having trouble. Yeah. So it's probably brick, but it's interesting. Normally, with a building like this, they would be the same construction. Or here, actually, the roof might be cantilevering out over. So we'll see if we can see it here. It's a really hard one. I've been really trying to find images from the outside. Well, here's another building that is more well known. That's the Rose Seidler House, and that's his first major building in Australia, and that's got typical construction elements that are used throughout his career in residential, especially. So that might give you some cues for the construction. But again, here that seems to be the only photo. They have the exterior here. And that's basically showing the same thing. Okay, so the section that I've got here gives some indication as well. So what we'll maybe do is just say that the roof does go out over the wall, and then we don't have to worry too much about the material anyway. And going back into plan here, I'm simply going to measure using the tape measure to see the size of that wall. So 340, maybe 350. Let's see if I do a bit more. Yeah, I think maybe 350. Okay, so I'm simply going to use the wall tool. And since I know what the material is, and it's one that isn't likely to change, I'm going to set that material up straight away in the wall. I'm going to start with a simpler wall. It'll default to double brick 270, so it's a real giveaway when people haven't been thinking about their wall types, when you see projects set up with all of the walls on that wall type, double brick 270. It's usually too much for existing walls, so I'm going to set it to a simpler wall, like one of these generic walls, generic 300. And then I'll go to edit type and duplicate and call it sandstone 350 mil. I don't need to say it's a wall, I know it's a wall, so sandstone 350 mil. And then I'm going to edit, and so edit next to structure that was. It's the only edit button there, I suppose, but just so you know. And then change the thickness to 350, that's the most important thing. But I'll also set the material up as I go. So this is just to reinforce what we were looking at earlier with materials. I'm going to click Browse. So hopefully used to the slow loading. The first time you go into the material editor, it might take a minute to load. It's loading the render modules. But once it's loaded the first time, then it won't take as long after that. There we go, that's nearly done. It's going extra slow on mine because it's recording, but sure, it still shouldn't take much longer. There it is. Okay, so did I show you how you can make materials from the section down the bottom here last time? Yep, good. Okay, so, sorry? That's right, that's what I'm going to show you now. So making them from down here is a good shortcut. It'll save you time, and you can make complete materials using these pre-made presets, I suppose. But if you have a material that's close to what you want, it's not a bad idea to start with that instead. So I'm just looking here to see if I have any stone materials. I don't think I will.
There's one next to sugar.
Oh, is there? Sorry, I just can't see it here.
There's teak,
Oh no, down in there, you know, but I'm looking in the list above. So, okay, so going through the list here, so you've got two things. You've got your project materials. This section down here where it says Autodesk materials, they're the library materials. So I can definitely get one from there, but like I said, if there's one in the project that's close to what you want, it's not a bad idea to start with that instead. So also to make sure you've seen how to make a material using one that you already have, and just like a lot of things in Revit, you can duplicate it. So I'm going to right click on this masonry material and go to duplicate. And I'm going to call it masonry stone. Sandstone. Yes, it is. Okay, so hopefully you all know stone is just another type of masonry. Brickwork, concrete block, sandstone, granite, it's all masonry. Because, well, actually granite maybe wouldn't usually be masonry, but it could be sometimes. But you know why they're masonry? Got any idea? Because masons used to put them together, and it's anything that's assembled in blocks, essentially, is masonry. So it's good to think of that. And so here we've got a duplicate of the material that was called masonry, but the surface pattern over here is still set to brick. So I'm going to change that just by clicking on that button. And for now I'll just choose block, which is the largest block size we have. That'll be not that close, but close enough for now to the sandstone blocks. See if we can find a better one later. And the cut pattern I'll just leave with the brickwork symbol, which is also okay for masonry. So hopefully you can see why it's not a bad idea to start with an existing material. Now I can go to Appearance and look at the render setup. So this one is on blocks, and this is where most people get into trouble setting up their materials. They'll forget to change the appearance. And so if I just go and make changes down here without changing the appearance to something new, it'll change this material, but it'll also change masonry, because masonry also uses blocks. So what you need to try and remember is either duplicate or replace the appearance when you make new materials. And I'm just going to replace. So you can either right click on the tab and then choose replace, or you can choose the button at the end here with the two squares. That does replace as well. And it's really important that you know about this, because this is also how you get access to the full render library. And there's a lot more in here than in that other little Autodesk library that you have in the material editor. So I'll show you, if you haven't seen this one already, make sure you go to the Appearance library, click on the arrow next to it, and you'll see all these different categories. I'm going to go to Stone, and then scrolling down here, well, we can see here there's fieldstone, which is actually not far off sandstone. But if you go down, there's one called Small Uneven Stones Brown, which is pretty close to the sandstone that we want. So in the stone category, so you've got to make sure you're in the Appearance library. Click on the arrow next to it, go down to Stone, and then you should be able to scroll down and find one called Small Uneven Rectangular Stones Brown. Are you in the appearance library? Yeah. You've got to click on the replace button. So you need to be in the material editor. You're probably not in appearance. Let's just see. Oh, I've got an unplugged monitor. Oh, yeah, you're in masonry. You've got to go down to stone. Yeah, just click on where it says stone. Yep, that's it, and then you'll find it. Okay, so to bring that into the masonry material that we're working on, you need to double-click on that material. Remember, this is just the appearance. Appearance is essentially rendering. So now that I've done that, I've double-clicked, and you can see now that's in here on the appearance tab. So I'm going to close this dialog box, and there we are. We can see the image. And I'm also going to show you then another real-life problem you'll have with these materials. When I click on that swatch, it'll bring up some settings I can use to adjust it, but try and just remember what this looks like. When you see this, that should ring alarm bells, and hopefully you'll get used to that being an issue. That's not the way it should come up. So if you see things like offset X, offset Y, size X, size Y, U offset, U scale, all of those things, it's not right, because you should be looking for width and height. That's all you want to change here. So this is actually an error. It's coming in from another program basically. So I'm going to just hit done. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to click OK and leave it for now. Click OK again and again, and then I'm going to go back in, edit type, edit, click to find the select the material, browse to go back into it, back to appearance, and then back to where I was by clicking on that swatch. I notice how it's changed. It's just one of those things. It only happens the first time, then it'll be right. Yeah, yeah, just the first time. Just one of those errors. I don't know why they haven't fixed it yet, but it's just the way it is. Okay, so now we've got sample size and we've got width and height. So hopefully you remember, you're trying to change width and height. If you don't see it, close it once and fix it by just opening it again. Right, so we know that, well, you might not know, this sample swatch or sample size is a metre. So, not sample size, sorry, that cube there is basically a metre, and it's on production quality, so I'm going to make that a bit bigger. So these are fairly large, but I want to make them a bit larger. And so, clicking on that swatch there. So actually, sorry, that might be 500. So I want to make these stones bigger. At the moment, that image stretches out over slightly over 1.5 metres. I'm going to change that to 3 metres, 3,000. It doesn't matter which one you change, the width or the height. They'll both change. And notice how on the preview cube here, it's twice the size. I'll hit done. Now, it might be hard to see, but the bumps haven't changed. The image has changed, the colours, but the bumps are still the original size. So you need to expand the relief pattern, the little arrow next to relief pattern there, and notice there's a black and white version of that, and that does the bumps or the relief. So you need to click on that and make it the same size, 3,000. And now you can see there, notice how the bumps line up now, and that looks much better. So I'm going to click OK, 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 and then just go ahead and draw my wall by tracing over. First, I'm going to set my location line to finish face exterior, and I think I'll just set my height to roof for now. It's going to be sloping at the top, but doesn't hurt to set it to a level. And then we're going to start on the intersection of the two reference planes, and then just trace over the image to place that first wall. Okay, so remember that material is used for a few other elements, so by doing all of that work, setting it up for the wall, we've got it ready to go for the others. And so the height, so when you're drawing the wall, you can set the height. No, in top constraint if you're looking in properties. Okay, so I was going to show you though in 3D. You need to make that level as well. So if you haven't made the roof level, you've got to make that. So, okay, so I'm going to show you with realistic in the 3D view what that wall looks like. Okay, so that's close enough to what we need for now. Now, the other walls aren't as well defined, so like I said, I think we can just use, I assume they're timber framed or masonry. They might be masonry, but I think we'll just say they're timber framed for now. So, again, just like the other one, back in my plan, I'm going to measure the size using the ruler. So, okay, so 230. That tells me it could possibly be solid brickwork, but that would be a real issue. You shouldn't have solid brickwork on the outside of buildings. So, with any luck and knowing Seidler stuff, there's a good chance it is timber frame. So let's just say it is timber frame. So I'm going to go to draw a new wall and just make a new wall type. So hopefully this will get you used to working with different wall types. So again, if you missed this, back in the plan view, clicking on the wall button, I'm going to go in my properties panel back to, say, generic 200mm wall, edit type, duplicate. And we'll say it's, well, we don't even know if it's timber frame. Let's just say existing 230mm and leave it at that. And I'm going to go to edit the structure. We don't really know what the material is, and if you're not sure what the material is, finish is a good material to use. That's kind of like a default all-round material. So I'm going to leave it on that and then change the thickness to 230. And now that one's basically done. And then my height is still set to roof. My location line's on finish face exterior. And so I'm going to draw this time from the top of the wall here. And I want to come down to the intersection there before coming across and just finishing here. Escape twice to finish and look in 3D. Got a very simple layout, but that's going to be a good basis for the floors. No, I made a new one. So yeah, just the size. That's right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, just the size. That's it. Okay, so now we've got to make a decision about the floors. So I just want to at least get a couple of floors in for you, and so again, just going through our photos here. Yeah, it looks like, okay, again, typical Seidler. You've got there a little hob where the doors go outside, but then the floors are basically at the same level. And that's pretty typical. Have any of you got balconies off your living space? and noticed how the floor level changes? No? Is it anyone in apartments or with houses that have a balcony going off their living space? Yep. So have you noticed what happens with the floor level? Yeah, it usually goes down. Older buildings, anything more than 10, 15 years old, will often go down. But Seidler was ahead of his time, and with a lot of his, he worked out ways of having it at the same floor height. And a lot of newer buildings, that's typical, that they do have it at the same level. So we can do that as well, but notice he's got this division here. So that means there is a wall between them, and we can use two separate floors, even though we're going to have them at the same height. Okay, so we'll maybe think about using curtain walls for that. And I know I've showed some of you curtain walls with the last project, but maybe not everyone's used them. So just very quickly to show you, the wall tool has the option of curtain walls down the bottom. And if you haven't used them for the edge of your spaces, you might not realise that it's pretty difficult to use them for the edge of floors. So I'm going to leave that curtain wall for now and just go straight ahead and do the floor. So we're going to go Architecture tab, and then Floor. And notice it begins on Pick Walls. So using the walls I already have, I can pick the outer edge of each of those walls, those three main walls. But remember, I don't want to use, there's no wall here for me to use, but I wouldn't use it even if it was there. Okay, so I can't use pick walls to make this edge. Remember, in your draw panel you have that extra button when you make things like floors, pick walls. But you can always go back just to drawing lines. And I can draw over just over the plan to get an edge for my floor. But now I need to join those lines together myself, and I might go to my ground floor plan now that doesn't have the image, so it's a bit easier to see. And using trim to corner, I can just join these lines together, just making sure they all touch at the corner. I'm just going to leave the floor on the generic 150mm for now. We'll make a proper floor type for that later. So, tick to finish, got a basic floor there. Now, the next part I'll do a little bit quicker. We've got a masonry wall there in the middle. And I want to set that out and make sure that's lined up with the stairs and everything, the entry. That's a pretty important axis in the design. But now if I go back to the ground floor plan with the image, I can't see it anymore because the floor is covering it. So, got any ideas about some simple things you can do to make that easier to read? Do you want to make something see-through? You could hide it, yeah, you could, but I actually want to keep the floor there. So another way, what about wireframe? You might have been wondering why wireframe's there, but it's really useful in this situation like this. So if I go to wireframe, makes it all see-through. Also down here, I'm going to set it to fine, and that'll make the wall see-through. So now I can see my plan again. Oh yeah, you need to just make sure they're all joined together. The corner. So I'll just do next, but I'll come back and look at that in a minute. Oh yeah, okay. So I said I'd show you the grid tool as well. So I've used reference planes for the outside of my walls, outside of the building. Grids are similar. So you'll see on the architecture tab you have the grid tool. So I'm just going to go to grid, and I'm going to do it the European way. I'm going to draw over the centre of the walls for my first grids. Bring this down. Okay, so that there is, like I said, a bit like a reference plane, but it has a grid bubble at the end. And I'm going to use this for the centre line of, oh no, sorry, actually I'll use it for the edge here. It's going to get a bit confusing. Sorry, I didn't think about that. So I'm going to do it the Australian and British way, which is to put it on the edge. So sometimes I like to do it the European way, which is centred just because it works with columns, but I don't think we've got any columns here, so I'll do it on the edge. Sorry about that. So just over the reference planes, just want to show you a bit about grids and the other tools you have in Revit. So it's kind of doubling up the reference planes. You could use reference planes for this really, but just want to make sure we see the bubbles there, because I want to put in that masonry element and have that line up with the stairs, and it's a pretty important element in the design. So notice I'm setting that up before I go ahead and draw in this next lot of walls. And I'm going to use this to start looking at my measurements. Okay, so I'm going to draw a dimension maybe between these reference planes. You can see 12,729 is not a round number. And so between these grid lines as well, we're going to have unusual numbers. Now, I think for this project, you'll get away with that because I don't think you need to put measurements on your design drawings. So you could leave it like that. But later, if you do need to show measurements, then you'd want to round those off to more rational numbers. And I think we can live with that. And then let's see if the spacing's fairly equal. So here, 4951, and then the other one, 4930. Close enough for now. Maybe we can look at, again, rationalising that. And you can see here this line actually might come over to the stairs later anyway. So now anyway I can go and draw the next lot of walls. Again, just with that same wall type, existing 230. I'm going to start here. I really just want to show you some of the things to think about. Don't expect you to follow along with this right away. So, it's on finished face exterior. And it's going onto the wrong side of my reference plane. So what do you think you might do here instead? Well, you could, but then this really is the exterior face. That is the outside of the wall. And that's really what you're telling Revit. When you choose this option, it's not just saying go left or right, it's saying this is the outside or this is the internal face of that wall construction. So I want it to be on finished face exterior. I just want the wall to go the other way. So always remember, you can press space whenever you're drawing a wall to flip it as you go. And that works with lots of things. Okay, so I'm going to come up now, and so I think that would be a curtain wall, some sort of glazed wall, so we'll leave that side. Alright, so then I'll show you very briefly how to do a simple curtain wall. Clicking on the wall tool, and then I'm going to scroll down to storefront. So you'll see in your list of walls you have the basic walls at the top, and then further down you have storefront under curtain walls. So you've got two types. If you've used curtain walls, you might have used this one, which is just plain glass, curtain wall 6mm thick glazing. And then the one below that is storefront, which has some framing put in. So I'm going to go to edit type and show you there it's using this mullion, but it's got a spacing of 2400 for the height. That's actually okay, and then a vertical spacing of 1500. Okay, so I'm going to set that to none. None. So there, and it will still have mullions at the end. But what I might do is I'll put it back to the setting it had before, and I'll duplicate, so I can show you the original one. So we'll call this Seidler curtain wall, and then I'll set this one to none, and that's all I'm changing. So vertical grid, layout, set to none, and that's it. Click OK. Okay, so now I'm just going to draw it as best I can between these two grid lines, or sorry, between this grid line and the wall. Left to right. Now it's a bit hard to see in this view because I've got the image there, but if I go back to the original ground floor, then I can see it, and you can see then that it's got a mullion at the end because it's set up to still have that, but it doesn't have any vertical mullions. We'll see in 3D. Okay, so there, so we've got horizontal mullions because I didn't change that setting. So I've got the horizontal grid still at 2400. If I go back to storefront, which had that vertical grid set at 1500, then we'll see the grid going that way too. But I don't want that. So that's a good initial setup. We'll modify that further. So I'm going to go back into the plan view, and then to position this curtain wall, it's a little bit tricky. You've got to get it so that this edge is lined up with the wall over here. So I just drew it roughly to begin with, and now I'm going to go to the Modify tab, click Align. So in the Modify panel, the first button there with the two rectangles is your Align tool. Going to choose this edge over here. That's the wall where I want it to go. And then I'll choose the edge of my mullion. Why won't let me choose that? It should. Oh, it's not being my friend. Okay, so I'll just try. Let's see if I move it out. Ah, no, it's joined it, that's why. Okay, so when that happens, it's because even though it's a curtain wall, it will join it with other walls, and it's done that automatically. You can see from the grip here. I didn't want to go too far into this, but I'll have to. So I'm going to drag that away. It's just one of these things you have to do sometimes. And at the other end, I'll do the same thing. Oops. It's where the automatic things in Revit actually get in the way sometimes. So to select the curtain wall, you need to click on the center line. And so I'll just do that again. And I'm trying to get the measurement to come up the way it just did a second ago. It doesn't seem to want to do it for me. Let's see if it will align. No, okay. So, yeah, so we have to do this, unfortunately. I'm going to have to, let's see if we get it this way. Yeah. Okay, look, if you do what I've just done, in other words, zoom around so that you're showing the wall with the dimension to another wall not on the screen, those little tricks, you can get it to show a dimension back to the floor. It's because I've got the view to not show the end of this wall. That's pretty tedious, so I'll show you another way. And this is really what you need to get used to with Revit. You're probably finding already that it's difficult to get it to measure to the thing you want. When you click on something, you've probably used those dimensions up to a point, but then you'll find it just won't give you the measurement sometimes where you want it to be. When that happens, remember you can always draw in your own dimensions. So you've got the dimension tool here on the Modify tab, or up the top in the Quick Access toolbar, it's this button here next to the ruler. So if you're not already used to drawing dimensions, it's something you need to get used to. And so here I'll click on that dimension button, and that's a line dimension, which is the one you use for most things. So now I'm going to dimension from the centre of my curtain wall to the edge of my floor. Replace that over to one side, and you can see clearly there that's 60 mil. I want it to be 75 mil because the mullion I know is 150 mil. So I'm going to select my curtain wall, and notice how now that number's blue. So does that make sense? So you can see I'm drawing in a dimension to force it to give me that measurement to work with. We're not going to show that on the drawings in the end, it's purely so that I've got something to work with. So again, by selecting my curtain wall now, I need to make sure that number comes up, and we can change that to 75. No, this is the position of the wall, yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to drag it back, and this is again just one of these things that you need to get used to if you want to use Revit. If you really think this approach is crazy, have a look at ArchiCAD instead. ArchiCAD doesn't do this. So if you get frustrated with this approach, you might find ArchiCAD is more your sort of program.
So are you saying we shouldn't join it to the wall straight away, we should do it like that so we can dimension?
Oh, no, sometimes you just need to drag it away. It's really on the left-hand side that you're going to have an issue. So I suppose, yeah, you could draw it without joining it and then join it later if you want to, but it doesn't really make much difference. Oh yeah, I'll do it in a second, yeah. Okay, so that's the first one done, and now I'll go and draw one on the other side. So we're not going to worry about the sliding door panels for now. Just get used to drawing curtain walls. So like you were saying, that's probably not a bad way of doing it. Just draw it and don't connect it over here, because that's the wall that's going to go with it. So if I drew this wall all the way to here, it would think that these two walls should be joined together, and if I move one, it's going to move the other one. It's the program that's trying to make your life easier, but sometimes it gets in the way. So it's just, again, the way Revit's been designed. So now I can dimension from the centre of my curtain wall to the floor, place that over here, select my curtain wall, make that 75, and I know it's sitting right on the edge of my floor. Again, one of these tedious little things that will make your life a whole lot easier once it's all set up. Alrighty, so now I've got a good basis to put in the floor for the balcony. Okay, so using the floor tool now, and I'll finish up after this. Pick walls is no good here. It'll let me pick the curtain wall, but notice curtain walls are a bit funny, and this is why I've been showing you all those little tricks, because when I try to pick the curtain wall, it's just going to pick that centre line. So instead, I'm going to use either the line tool, and I can just draw lines, or pick lines. So always remember, in that draw panel, as well as pick walls, you've got pick lines, which will let you pick a lot more than pick walls. So I can pick the front of this curtain wall. I can also pick the reference planes or the grids, and then trim and join all these together. Okay, it might seem like a lot of work just to get a rectangle, but the main thing is that it's lined up with the outside of these walls the way it should be. So looking in 3D, starting to get towards the shell of the building, and you can set that to be a different sort of wall, different sort of floor. So that one might be timber, this one might be concrete. Okay, so if we have time, we'll work out the structure below this later on, but the main purpose of this model is for the interior view, so that's really what we're focusing on at first. So I'll give you some time to work on that, and then we'll have a look at the upper level floors in the roof afterwards if we have time.